Now, Uhuru Dempers was appointed by President Geingob on 2 presidential commissions, one on ancestral land rights and the African peer review mechanism. Now, President Geingob also supervised his work in 1999 when they were appointed by the founding president to the Presidential Commission on Education, Culture and Training. We are now joined by himself in the studio just to pay homage to the late Geingob, reflect a bit on his personal relationship, but of course, who we also refer to really as Geingob, who was the man of the people, and just reflect a little bit on some of the social programs that he was working on, as Uhuru was instrumental in a number of those programs as well. Mr. Dempers, thank you so much for making time out to join us this morning.
Thanks so much. I wish it was under better conditions, but so be it, yes.
So be it. Just to take a step back, how did the news of the president's untimely demise reach you? And what were some of your initial reactions when that news came to you?
Yes, we were actually in Cape Town for the Africa Alternative Mining in Durban. We traveled from here on the Friday. The weather was not good, and when we reached the border, we were driving, and when we reached the border border was closed because there was a power cut. So we arrived Saturday late in Cape Town and really went to bed earlier. And when I woke up, I was really, it's the one morning that I was hoping and praying that it's fake news, what I was hearing. But we got the news, and luckily, we're in the company of people from the region that knew and appreciated the president and were comforted by them. And many of them had praises about how he has been trying to create spaces for civil society in the region, and that he was really a leader of note that believed in democracy and the role that civil society they can play. So it was really a tough one, and upon re-entering Namibia after 7 days, the reality really sinked in about his loss, and yeah, we are still trying to cope with the situation.
What are some of your first encounters with Hage Geingob, the man? How did you meet the president first?
During the 1988 student uprising, some of us did not go back to school at the end of the year. We didn't complete the academic year. The following year was 1989, and some of us also took a decision not to go back to school and to join the election process, voter education and campaigning for the liberation movement, because we saw that as a decisive moment. So it was during that election campaign period, I think it was around June, that I didn't go to the airport, but the following day we were asked by Comrade Luboski and the local leaders to organize some laborers.
Anton
Luboski, yes. To organize some laborers, and we went around Dolam and single quarters and so on, picked up a few guys, but then we also joined that group because furniture of the new swap office was arriving from Johannesburg, and it had to be offloaded, and we saw this as an opportunity to meet the leadership that just arrived the previous days. I think it was the 18th that they arrived. The 19th is when we met at this Swabo, the new Swabo headquarters.
That is now them coming back from exile.
Yes, coming back from exile. So it was the second day upon their arrival that we met these leaders, and we really greeted and exchanged and so on. Then 1990, after independence, I went back to school to complete school, and here, one morning we were surprised with a visit by the new Prime Minister. That time I was the president of SRC, and we had to welcome him there, and he took him around some of the classrooms and so on, and also had to do the vote of thanks at the end of that ceremony. It was really a feeling that, yes, we are really independent. I mean, being visited by the new Prime Minister, back at school, new environment, and so on. It was really quite an experience. And then Of course, in later times, we met in more formal settings. But at school at Emmanuel Shifiti, during that visit, I think we were one of the few schools in Katutura that were first visited, and it was really a very moving encounter to be visited by the new Prime Minister and the reality of independence sinking in.
And I think the role also that the school played during that time was some of those historical events
it was indeed
that took place there.
Yes, yes. I mean, like the school hall where we were meeting was a new one. I remember when the then minister in the interim government, Andrew Majila, Andrew Majila came to visit the school. We were in the open air and it started raining. And then we shouted, we want the school hall, we want the school hall. And then the following year, he made a commitment that day. And the following year, we had a school hall built. So this was one of the first sort of big ceremonies that was really taking place in this new school hall that was built. So, I mean, this school being a battleground of many struggles, you know, some of us in 1988 were arrested in front of this school, put in jail, and really receiving the Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister, on these grounds. That was really a battleground in the days of struggle, especially during the 1988 student uprising. It was really fulfilling to see, and we felt like we had accomplished something by then.
Because that provides you obviously with the impetus to look at how you're looking at in terms of your work after high school now, going into the civic space that you went in.
Yes.
Let's look at those reflections. I think the first one that we're looking at is the Presidential Commission on Education that was established by then founding President Sam Nujoma. You were part of that commission, and of course Dr. Geingob was the one that was supervising that particular commission.
Yes.
Talk to us about that period.
Yeah. This was sort of the first 10 years after independence. So we were piloting a number of programs
and initiatives.
Yes, we switched to English as a medium of instruction. We introduced mother tongue education. The content of the curriculum was changed and so on. So 10 years later, we really wanted to look at what progress did we make in terms of the education, in terms of training programs, in terms of the culture and arts sector. So we were appointed at the beginning of the year. Professor John Tenner from the UK was the chairperson of the commission. I think we were about 10 commissioners that were appointed. And we went around the country until October, November that year to sort of have public hearings and research papers and presentations and so on. And we had to deliver some interim reports to the founding father, which appointed a commission. And President Hage was always there at State House, joined us for working lunches and so on, where we could feedback and get some responses, initial responses from the leadership. The Prime Minister, also with a strong education background, was useful in guiding the work that we're doing as a commission. When you look at the challenges we have in our education system, and the National Council just last week released a report on the state of education, and when you look at those challenges that they are mentioning in that report, it's really similar challenges that we already found.
To the foundings that you had in the commission already. Which year was that?
That was 1999.
1999.
So it was a 10-year review after independence. So that time we were saying that there was a lack of sense of an agency to address some of the challenges in the education sector. We were really promoting this idea of lifelong learning, that opportunities must be opened up. We even at the program where we're presenting in progress, we even dropped the idea of renaming the ministry as the Ministry of Lifelong Learning, because we so much
you wanted to focus on the adult literacy was also quite a huge focus during that time as well.
It was. So we were saying that from from the initial, from early childhood up to when we reach adulthood, there must be continuous opportunities of learning and knowledge building. There must be opportunities created. We mustn't see education as you know, the first few years of your life and then you go into work and you stop learning. There must be continuous education and training even if we are at work. Yeah.
What was his vision during the time for education, though? I mean, you're sitting on the commission, you're about to wrap up the commission in terms of the findings and the work that the commission was doing during that time. What was his vision now for education as the Prime Minister?
Some of the issues that I can recall is, for example, opening up different modes of education, it really pains me that even until today, you hear some of the leaders talking about those not academically inclined must go to the vocational training and so on, whereas vocational training must be a choice on its own. It must not be.
It must be on equal standing, with
yes,
academic teachings. Yeah.
And it's really pleasing to see that. With the recent initiatives around Skillshare Africa and the expos that we had recently, really putting vocational training at the center of the education and
so
skills
already then
building
in 1999, he was saying, look, we need to open up the different modes.
Yes, definitely, and also the need to open up opportunities that you know, when we say free education, we must really reflect that in the way that we handle admissions at schools and also pay special attention to marginalized communities. And you would remember that the Prime Minister, under his office, established offices such as the marginalized communities, the disability movement was also accommodated there, really to just make sure that nobody is left behind, and that those that are at the periphery are also brought into the mainstream and benefit from the opportunities that the new Namibia was trying to create.
And I think if one looks at it during that time as well, I mean, the fact that you're bringing this up, and it was also being mentioned yesterday by one of the gentlemen on the Food and Nutrition Alliance, saying that there was a very strong sense of, particularly on social protection and social welfare, that even during his prime minister tenure, what we're seeing during his presidency was already at advent of independence, to say that we have to take care of the vulnerable in our society.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt that the president had a very, very special focus on those that are at the risk of being left behind. And his association, for example, with the Basic Income Grant campaign was part of that vision. Stood up in Parliament, supported the pilot project, and so on. Appointed Bishop Kameda to head this ministry, and
in fact, established a Ministry of Poverty Eradication.
Exactly, and I mean, for example, we listened once to how he became attracted to this idea of the food bank. He said one of the daughters of the late comrade Mahulili took him after church to a spot where there were marginalized children and so on, and said, look here, your children here, they don't have any opportunity, they are hungry and so on. And he went back and was thinking of different ideas, and then came up with this idea of the food bank and so on. So even, you know, the issues around the old age grant, we learned that the president saw the link between what the old age grant was doing, not only to the elderly, but also the impact it had on child poverty. And therefore, when raising the amount of the old age pension, he was not only addressing the needs of the old age and the pensioners, but was looking at how those in the households
that are headed by
can benefit from that.
Yeah.
So although it's called an old age grant, we can say that it really benefited the children and the youth at the end of the day. And most of it is spent on food, which is really the basic means of survival.
In terms of this, of course, we're now looking at the time that you're being brought on as for the Africa peer review mechanism. Let's reflect on that a little bit in terms of that. I mean, what was that conversation like, and what were the expectations, and bringing you on board to be part of the peer review mechanism?
Yeah, you see, on both of these two commissions that I was appointed by President Geingob, the way the appointments went was a bit weird, because I remember, for example, after the Second Land Conference, when we heard in the corridors that the president was putting together terms of reference, he had requested Attorney General and the minister in the presidency to put together some terms of reference for the commission. So as proactive actors, civil society, we put together some submission. We said, in terms of reference, can we include this? For example, the reference to a human rights perspective in the terms of reference of the commission comes from our submission as civil society. We even, I think, 5 or 6 names we recommended to be considered for appointment on this commission and so on. And I wrote that letter because then I was the convener of the Civil Society Organizations Working Group on Land Reform. So I wrote that letter nominating these 5 people and also giving these inputs in terms of the terms of reference.
January, and that was for the Ancestral Commission?
Ancestral Land Commission.
Okay.
January, I'm on the farm having a late holiday, and here Minister Anjamba, the minister in the presidency, calls me and says, the president wants you to serve on this commission. But I said, but Comrade Anjamba, we submitted some names, but the president wants you on this commission. Must I say, you are declining and so on. It's the same happened with the Africa peer review mechanism. We thought that civil society was not well represented when the first names were mentioned, so we recommended a number of names. And again, I wrote that letter. Inge Zamwani calls me from State House and says, President wants you to serve on this commission. I said, maybe there is a confusion, but we submitted some names that President said I must.
He wants you to be part of this one.
He wants to be. So I took that very serious, and you see, the Africa peer review mechanism, it was part of the continental projects that the president was really pushing in the sort of the new Africa, the new leadership that he was promoting. And Namibia couldn't not belong to this mechanism and still preach sort of about this new Africa. So we were so happy when in 2017 President took Namibia to join the Africa peer review mechanism. And we quickly put together the institutions, the systems, the processes that are required to make this work. In a very short period of time, we were able to produce the targeted review on youth unemployment.
Very important report, by the way.
Very important one. I wish we can make more progress on the recommendations of that report. And then also the country review report, which we are hoping that it would be launched soon by the new president, and then also the national governance report that we are busy with. And you know, the mechanism expects that. But when you talk to other countries that also have APRM mechanisms, you will hear about the sense of they are not independent. There's a bit of interference from political leadership and so on. But we did not experience that directly or indirectly. We did not experience that when we were doing our work. We were meeting the president on when we needed to meet. We would make an appointment. We were never summoned to State House to, explain a report that we have prepared and so on. So the president did not only believe in these processes, but he also put it in practice that once he has appointed an independent body to do its work, that we shouldn't interfere with that it should do its work, whether their reports are critical, whether they are considered negative or whatever. let it be, and let's engage in a debate to see how we can address that criticism that is coming from those processes.
And what does that really tell us about his leadership style? Because, I mean, if you look at, for example, that APRM report, I've seen the report, the targeted review on youth unemployment in Namibia, and it's scathing in certain respects. Under normal practices, you wouldn't find a president that these people are sitting in our office, they produce this report that is attacking us like this, or that is, being a little bit more aggressive towards us. What does that tell us about his leadership? The fact that you say that he didn't interfere in the work of the report, even though once the report was done, how the report was also accepted. What does that tell us about his leadership characteristics?
Yeah, I think it says a lot about that he's a tolerant leader, that he is willing to accommodate dissenting views, critical voices, and I've on several occasions really started to believe strongly that the president was a good listener. For example, at the Second Land Conference, the president made a powerful opening speech on day one. It was a 5-day conference. The president seated there quietly. I mean, there were people coming up on the stage, queuing up, coming up on the stage and saying all kinds of things about how government has failed in terms of the land reform program, how disappointed they are, and some of the things we sort of not very factual and so on, but the president gave them the space to sit down and listen for 4 days. And on the 5th day, at the end, he was the last speaker, said, "I've heard you. We are going to work on these issues." The president did not jump up and say, "No, you are not telling the truth." No, I mean, like day one at that Second Land Conference, I was the last speaker. I think it was around 10 in the evening, and the president was still sitting there. Every day the president would come to that conference.
The sessions were quite lengthy sessions.
They were very lengthy. Even when we had the commissions, the group discussions and so on, president would come quietly, sit there at the back, listen to what the discussions were going on and so on. So that is a leader that is willing to give space to people to have a conversation. Intervene when it's necessary at the start, give direction, and then also at the end sort of concluding and giving a direction in terms of where that process would go. And I particularly read several times the concluding statement, and the president goes at length talking about how we must be careful about bureaucracy and how bureaucracy can stifle good intentions, good programs and policies. And unfortunately, we have seen that in Namibia, that a number of very good initiatives. For example, at that Second Land Conference, the president declared the situation in the informal settlements as a national emergency and a humanitarian crisis. We were expecting that as the responsible ministry, as the stakeholders, we will quickly come together,
close ranks and start streamlining and deliver solutions.
And have an emergency response plan, The president was also very accommodative. For example, when the Second Land Conference was being organized, we felt excluded, that the Ministry of Lands was doing things alone.
So when you say we, you're referring to as civil
society organizations, yes. We wrote to the minister that was at that point responsible for the organization of the conference. The minister did not accommodate our ideas. The minister was refusing to meet with us. And then we elevated the issue to the president. I mean, I even thought that when we sent the email, when I sent the email, I even thought that the email bounced back, because within 30 minutes there was a response from State House, and it was acknowledging and saying that this is appreciated. And within a week, the president was asking, "No, give me more inputs. What are you saying? Can you come up with some suggestions and so on?" And we said yes. take this thing away from the Minister of Lands, elevate it to the level of the Prime Minister, and let's have an inclusive organizing committee. The President listened. He postponed the second land conference with 1 year so that there could be proper preparations made, research done, proper assessments, and we had a good second land conference.
So there was a postponement based on, obviously, input coming in from civil society, which for many administrations and African administrations, the civil society sort of is an antagonist to the government. You're saying that those inputs are taken in. Reflect a little bit on the consultative nature of his leadership, because everything you're mentioning now speaks to that.
Yes, I think the president was very, very, very consultative. Sometimes we were also sort of saying quietly that president is consulting too much. Sometimes he must just put his foot down, and but when you come to State House, president will be there with his full team, because he wants all of them to hear what we have to say, and then also to respond accordingly. The president had time to, when he's consulting, is not only sort of, it's not just to fill out a checklist that I've consulted, but he sits and listens and engages debate, Sometimes you challenge us to say, I'm elected, you civil society, where do you get your mandate from, and so on. So he was very, very consultative. I wish some of his people in his team, especially the ministers, some of the senior civil servants, would really take that, because sometimes we really get so frustrated. You write a letter to an executive director, to a minister, months pass by without even that letter being acknowledged. You write a letter to the presidency. Within a day, the letter is acknowledged and you have a response. So I really hope that in terms of style, in terms of effectiveness, instead of respecting key stakeholders in society, in this democratic process, that all of us can learn and can build on what he was trying to emulate.
In terms of administration, of course, one of the tenets that we've come to know him about after he became president was the issue around transparency and accountability. Something which, of course, civil society always laments. You want that transparency within government administration, within government bureaucracy. Reflect a little bit on that. This Maxims, he made a very, very powerful gesture by declaring his assets, particularly under the context of transparency. Talk to us about that particular move and what that meant for civil society and sort of the outlook that was set for the new administration that was coming in.
Yeah, I think even in the midst of crisis like COVID, the fact that the president took so much time to communicate with the people, the fact that he was the front runner in terms of protecting free media, so that even if media is digging in sensitive areas, is being very critical and so on, the president would still maintain that no journalist will be prosecuted or would be behind bars because of that criticism. So those actions really demonstrates that the president was opening up our society and would wanted really transparency not only to be a good value, but that we put it in practice, and that we are very transparent in terms of the way things are done. President was sometimes calling even his team to order for failing to communicate with the media, saying, why are you not answering the calls? Why are you not engaging? Why are you not giving the information? And that sometimes people, because you are not communicating, gets the impression that no services is being delivered, nothing is being done by government. So the president did not only believe in these principles, he was really practicing, he was living them. And we were also surprised that the response from the region, where people in the region were saying that it was one leader that was really opening up space for civil society. When
that was going to be my next question in terms of what legacy does it leave with respect to civil society organizations?
Yeah, he's really opened up space. If there is a civil society organization that tried to have audience with the president and was denied or was not given that audience, I would be surprised. I remember, for example, the last meeting that the president had with the church leaders of CCN. That was not a meeting that was initiated by the president. The church leaders under CCN wrote to the president and said, we want to see you. That meeting was confirmed in a week's time. And the president had a meeting with the CCN executive committee and so on. For example, there were crisis situations. Civil Society Forum Zimbabwe came here and wanted to see the presidency. We had to organize the audience. When the Swaziland crisis happened, those comrades came here and were saying, President is on the troika of SADC and so on. We want to have an engagement
and some of these conversations
with the
we're not even aware of in the mainstream media, that this sort of consultations are taking place even outside of the country.
Exactly. So there was really a lot of effort in the country to open up space for civil society, to engage civil society. I mean, the president did not shy away from criticizing if he felt that civil society was going out of line or was not factual and so on. We had to engage in debate and discussions and sort of provide information. When, for example, we're saying we excluded from the organizing of the Second Land Conference, President wrote back, asked us a few questions and said, what do you mean? Can you give facts? Can you say, this is the letter we wrote, this is the conversations we had, and based on that informed, the president was able to take informed. So is giving, sort of listening to both sides. I'm sure the president also engaged the minister and asked his side of the story, and based on the information that he received, gave direction in terms of how the process must move forward.
In conclusion, how does Uhuru Dempers remember Hage Geingob?
Ricardo, I'm a bit worried. I'm a bit worried, Namibian. I'm not sure to what extent we as Namibians are willing to do what President Geingob was preaching, was trying to live out, was wanting us, the Namibian house.
You're concerned about the Namibian house?
I'm concerned about the Namibian house because I'm not sure whether President Geingob had enough time to solidify this house. And I'm hoping and praying that God will give us leadership that will build on strengthening this Namibian house. The president has accomplished his mission. He has done the best that he could. And we wish that the president go and rest in peace, and us that are remaining behind, I hope that we will lift out the values, the ideals, the principles that he stood for. Sometimes I'm in conversations with young people, with elderly, and the tendencies of tribalism, of exclusion and so on. It really worries me, and I hope that what I saw in the past 2 weeks, what Namibians are expressing and so on, I really hope that we will live to that, and that this was not just for the mood of the moment, but that we will really build on that, and especially the young people. I really hope that we would have picked up 1 or 2 things from what the president has done.
All right. Yeah. Mr. Dempers, thank you so much for making time out to join us and having this earnest conversation with us this morning.
Thank you for this very great opportunity.
Uhuru Dempers, of course, as we know him, a veteran when it comes to civil society organizations and of keeping the government on its feet, but of course also reflecting on the collaborations with the president, the responsibilities that were provided, and of course the platform to civil society organizations to do their work in the country. On that note,